Ben Yokoyama and the Cookie of Doom, chapters 10 and 11. We are on to chapters 10 and 11. Chapter 10 of the book, Ben Yokoyama and the Cookie of Doom. It's book 1 in the Cookie Chronicles. Janet lived in the house behind Ben's, but there was an extremely tall fence between their yards. And I'm going to refer you back to that map that I showed you on maybe the first day. This is Ben's house right here. So in the very back of Ben's house would be Janet. And there it is, Janet's house. This is their big, long backyard. So they, what's called butt up against each other in the backyards. Ben's neighborhood. He could have ridden his scooter all the way around the block. Instead, he climbed the oak tree in his yard, wiggled himself along the limb that reached out over the fence, and dropped down onto Janet's trampoline. This way was much faster. Now, that would be fun. Look at that. That would be so much fun. Here's the fence. Here's the tree. Walks out here, climbs here, bounces on the trampoline. To get back home, Ben would have to go the whole way around the block. Janet's yard lacked an oak tree. Ben let himself in the back door and found Janet reading comics in the middle of her living room floor. There she is, enjoying comics. He didn't know how to break the bad news, so he decided to ease into it. "Imagine it's my last day," he said. Janet looked concerned. "Are you sick?" She put her hand on his forehead and frowned. "You don't feel sick, and you don't look sick." "I'm not sick, but my fortune cookie said it could be my last day, so I have to assume that it might be." "It's not your last day," said Janet, who wasn't as practical as a socket wrench. "A fortune is just a piece of paper that someone shoved into a cookie. Anyone could have gotten that fortune. But I did." "It's not your last day," said Janet with as much certainty as an art teacher says yellow and blue make green. "But what if it is?" Ben insisted. Janet looked as puzzled as someone who had just learned the right way to spell rendezvous. Isn't that weird? It looks like a Z and a V. Rendezvous, but it's rendezvous. "Yes, I see what you mean," she said, her face twisting itself from a breadstick into a pretzel. "What if it is my last day?" Suddenly Janet seemed anything but practical. "Exactly," said Ben, who felt understood. "How would you spend it?" he prompted, eagerly waiting for big thoughts to come. He didn't have to wait long. Look at her. "I would eat a lot of pancakes. It's important to eat the things you love the most on your last day in life. Look at that big stack of pancakes with some butter and syrup." "I completely agree," said Ben, remembering why he and Janet were such good friends. "Do you happen to have an entire cake?" "Nope," said Janet, who didn't seem surprised by the question. She knew Ben pretty well. "How about a whole box of spaghetti then?" he asked. Janet marched into the kitchen and opened the pantry. She pulled out a box of spaghetti, a jar of spaghetti sauce, and a box of pancake mix. Look at that. Ben's eye got as big as marshmallows in a microwave. I love to microwave marshmallows. For Rice Krispie treats, of course. Then they got narrow like fingernail clippings. "Is your mom home?" "She's at work." Janet's mom was a librarian who had to work on Saturdays. Ben knew better than to ask about Janet's dad. "And we're not allowed to use the stove?" "No, sir." Ben was discouraged. He liked noodles because they were slippery and soft. "Shucks." "Shucks what?" said Janet. "Shucks, I wanted to eat a whole box of spaghetti, but now I can't." "Who says you can't?" Ben thought about that. "An uncooked noodle is better than no noodle at all," Janet pointed out. "That's good advice," said Ben. "You are wise." Janet didn't say, "I certainly am," but Ben could tell she was thinking it. He broke the stiff pieces of spaghetti into bite-sized bits, put them in a bowl, and added some cold sauce from the jar. Janet scooped pancake mix into a different bowl, added water and oil, and stirred until there was a gloop. Said Ben. I'm choosing to have a positive attitude, said Janet. Ready? Ben asked. Ready, said Janet. What do you think? I can't wait to see their faces. They were quiet for a moment as Ben chewed his crunchy noodle bits and Janet slurped her goop. Drat, says Janet. Have you ever tasted pancake batter just eating it raw? Ugh. Darn, said Ben. A little crunchy there, huh? Well, we need a new idea. What else can we do to make our last day the best? Janet opened her mouth as if she were about to say another big, wise thing. But then she stopped as if she knew that it was actually a terrible idea. Say it, said Ben. At first Janet didn't say it, but then she did. Chapter 11. Marshmallows don't need to be cooked, said Janet. More wisdom, said Ben, who had forgotten all about the sworn pledge to eat an entire bag of marshmallows as soon as they turned 18 and were free to be as foolish as they wanted to. Ben saw that Janet was thinking. They were not 18, not even close. But if this is the last day of our lives, said Janet, then we pretty much have to, said Ben. They went to the cupboard. There were 3 full bags of marshmallows, the big kind. I'm so happy about this, said Ben. It was meant to be, said Janet. I don't know about you guys. They both took a bag. Ben stuffed 7 marshmallows into his mouth. Janet stuffed 11 into hers. Ben chewed and chewed. It was so wonderful he wanted to cry. It's so wonderful. I want to cry, said Janet once she was done chewing. Ben wanted to agree, but his mouth was already full of 9 more marshmallows. It took about 5 minutes, but soon they were both holding empty bags and feeling extremely energetic. What else? Janet asked. Ben thought big. Suddenly anything seemed possible. Do you think they might get a tummy ache? That's a whole bag. Uh-oh. I'm not sure I want to know this. How about we make a giant pyramid out of plastic cups and knock it over with a broom? Yes! They did it, and it was thrilling. How about we stack all the sofa cushions on top of each other and see if we can touch the ceiling? Janet proposed. They did it. It was wobbly and maybe a little bit dangerous. Look at them up there. But they did touch the ceiling. Then they blew up a full pack of balloons and popped them one by one, broke a full bag of baby carrots in half, and tried on most of Janet's mom's hats. Just as they were running out of ideas, Ben had a new one. Operation Catapult? Yes! They went out to the trampoline. They had figured out that if one person bounced down, just as the other person was about to bounce up, the person going up would spring much higher, maybe even high enough to grab onto the big branch and make it back to Ben's yard without having to walk around the block, if they timed it perfectly. They had been trying for weeks, but hadn't made it work yet. I love that word, yet. It's now or never, said Ben. They bounced and bounced. Ben timed his landing perfectly, and Janet got pretty close to reaching the branch. Then Janet timed her landing perfectly, and Ben got even closer. But no matter how perfectly they timed it, they couldn't get quite high enough. So they bounced just to bounce for a while, probably because all those marshmallows. At the highest part of each bounce, they had an excellent view of Ben's yard and the other yards around the block. Oh, said Janet, I remember something else I've always wanted to do. Janet landed just as Ben was about to take off, sending him high into the air. What? He asked. I want to eat an apple from Mrs. Ezra's tree. Mrs. Ezra lived on Ben's side of the block, 2 houses down from his. She was very old and extremely mysterious. At night, she burned candles instead of turning on lamps. She always wore hats even when it wasn't cold. Instead of using her front door, she always used the one on the side of her house, as if she had something to hide. In the center of Mrs. Ezra's yard was a magnificent old apple tree with apples that looked impossibly delicious. Ben had always wanted to taste them and even thought about sneaking over the fence to get one, but he never had, for obvious reasons. Look at the giant apple. Ben and Janet had discussed their feelings about beets, their different opinions of flip-flops, and their shared outrage that the word chili sounded like chili, even though chili is almost always served hot. But Janet had never mentioned Miss Ezra's apples before. "I've heard they're enchanted," said Janet without explanation, forcing Ben to ask, "What do you mean?" "I mean, they have magical powers. If you eat them, amazing things happen." "Like what?" "I wish I could say. I have no idea. That's why I want to try one so badly." "So why don't you?" "I don't want to turn into a troll." "Excuse me?" "Miss Ezra is a witch." "Says who?" "Says anyone you ask." Ben had heard rumors about Miss Ezra being more than just strange, but hearing them from Janet made him especially worried. She was not the type to make things up. "Wow," said Ben. He was excited. Eating an enchanted apple from the tree of an actual witch was definitely a big idea. Uh-oh. "How are you going to get one?" Ben couldn't wait to hear Janet's plan. "I'm not." "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's too risky. If a panther takes my cupcake, I'm not going to argue about it. I'm going to let the panther have my cupcake." "Why are we talking about panthers?" "We're not. That was just an example. We're still talking about enchanted apples. The point is, if this is my last day, I definitely don't want to spend it as a troll." "But if you don't get the apple today, you might never know what it tastes like." "Life is full of tough decisions, Ben." Look at their talking while they bounce. Ben supposed that was true, but he didn't have to like it. They bounced a bit longer. "I'm beat," said Janet. "Let's go inside." "Sounds good," said Ben, who was getting tired too. As Janet took her final bounce, Ben saw her glance longingly over the fence at Miss Ezra's yard, which made him wonder whether occasionally it did make sense to take a cupcake from a panther. What good is a big idea, thought Ben, without an equally big plan to bring it to life? And that's the end of chapter 11. Do you think they're going to go get an enchanted apple? We will soon find out.